Today I have two movies for you. One is a documentary from 2019. One is a movie that features a trilogy of short films from notable directors that was released in 2008. So, the documentary is Never Surrender, a Galaxy Quest documentary. That is available currently on, I want to say, Amazon Prime, and it is one of those just kind of a feel-good documentary about a subject you enjoy. So I would assume if you go into that documentary at all, you like Galaxy Quest, or at least somewhat, and it kind of assumes that you do. So if you don't, I mean, you're not going to, I don't think be convinced to love Galaxy Quest. But if you like Galaxy Quest or have enjoyed it at least once, it might give you kind of a bigger understanding and context of kind of how it kind of influenced a whole generation. And one of the things I think that's interesting about the movie, I mean, it's not super experimental, or it doesn't really cross a whole bunch of interesting boundaries as far as documentary filmmaking. But it does really do a good job setting the context and talking a lot about the creation of the film and kind of how all the pieces came together. You know, and it interviews a lot of the cast members, which of course is one of the more infamously awesome things about that movie is what an incredible cast they had for a generally goofy movie. But even more so than that, it talks a lot about how it was kind of the perfect movie for its time, because now where kind of geek/nerd culture is sort of a given and it's pretty accepted, actors and actresses now will, as opposed to trying to just be cool and be popular, for a while at least, they were really trying to kind of give out their geek cred, you know. And you had, you know, people like Zooey Deschanel and stuff that would kind of really try to be nerdy, and that was kind of their cool calling card. It kind of went along with the whole hipsterism, the idea that everyone had their nerdy, geeky side to them. Well, this really goes into more the idea of when that movie came out, still being really into Star Wars or Star Trek or Doctor Who or whatever your thing wasn't cool, and it really was a nerdy thing. And the aspect of this movie where they incorporate the nerdy fans into the universe of this sci-fi adventure where the characters from their favorite TV show get sucked into an actual sci-fi adventure was a pretty genius idea, and of course has gathered a ton of actual fandom from it. It really was one of the first movies to kind of acknowledge the role of the fan in the success and the power of a lot of those older sci-fi shows like Star Trek and Star Wars and so on. And it's kind of a key time for that to be happening, because if you think back about it, that was when you have movies like The Phantom Menace coming out, and a lot of the fans at that time were feeling that their franchises had kind of forgotten them, and they felt kind of like they had spent all this time and energy and love on these big franchises, and they were kind of not part of it anymore. So, but all that being said, it's just a fun documentary about the making of Galaxy Quest and kind of how the fans came along with that. So if you're interested in seeing that, you should. It's really good. I think I gave it about 4 stars. I mean, for me, it's really, really fun and a really feel-good movie. A great, you know, stuck in your house quarantine type of movie. Yeah, I mean, it's very light, but also makes you want to go watch Galaxy Quest again if you've already seen it once. And if you never did see it for somehow, you should probably watch the movie first before you see this. So the next movie I saw is a movie called Tokyo! And I put the exclamation point in there because you do a search for Tokyo, you don't get necessarily the movie you're looking for. So many movies have Tokyo in the title. But this is just Tokyo! From 2008. Now, I had forgotten about this movie way back. I don't know how many years it's been now since Holy Motors came out. But if anyone has not seen Holy Motors, that's directed by, I can never say his name, Leo Carax, Carax. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Carax. Anyway, that French director made this movie called Holy Motors. And I want to say that was probably about 6, 7, 8 years ago, maybe, something like that. If you haven't seen that movie, it's an incredibly weird movie. It follows the same actor. I'm going to look up the actor's name for you guys. Denis Lavant. And that's a male. Denis, Denis, Lavant. It follows this actor, and he goes through all these different crazy little scenes. So it's almost like a compilation movie of different little shorts. Holy Motors is. But this actor will go and he'll change into the next character, and then that character will be in the next little adventure. And it's really quite an amazing thing. It's almost like a one act, or I want to say, like, you know, you have the single actor on stage doing the whole play. It's almost like a one-man play, but in a really cinematic setting. And it's very, very strange and very unusual, and worth checking out. That's Holy Motors. Well, at the time that came out, there's one of the sequences in there has this really weird, crazy character with red hair and this like swooping beard, and he's like almost like a monster, and he comes out of the sewer and he runs around Paris and does all this crazy stuff. And his character name, I believe, is Merde, which is French for shit. Well, anyway, I had vaguely remembered that character had originally been in Tokyo. And it kind of came back to me recently. I was just searching through the different streaming services, and this happened to be on Tubi. Tubi is a great streaming service if you want to just find various movies, oddball movies. They have ads, but not many ads, and it's free. And you can sometimes find something like this. So, 3 directors, 3 shorts, but they're all fairly long shorts. So you get almost 40 minutes, 35, 40 minutes per short. So you can really kind of get into them, about half a movie worth of material in there. The first one's by Michel Gondry. And famously, most people at least like, if not love, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I would say the short that he has in this movie is one of the more personal things I've seen from him, a little less gimmicky, more personal. Not quite to the emotional level of Eternal Sunshine, but one of his better pieces, I feel. The other director is the Leon Carax that I already mentioned. He's the middle one. And then the third one is Bong Joon-ho. So, a lot of very interesting directors in one movie. It's a pretty effective movie. I really like it. I can see how some wouldn't. For me, it's probably a 4 to 4.5 because all of them are quality and all of them bring something different to the table. So the first movie is Interior Design. That's the one by Gondry. And it basically, and I'll just give thumbnails of each of these stories, but the basic idea is you've got this young kind of slacker couple. It's all in Tokyo, of course, and they're Tokyo residents. Well, actually, they're coming from somewhere else in Japan to Tokyo, to their friend's place. They're a couple slackers. You can tell that the young man, he's going to be independent films. He's going to be doing a screening at this local porn theater, so he's not very high in the indie scene. And then she's just kind of hanging out with him. They like to tell each other stories and make up, wild ideas about upcoming projects they might do. And they're essentially squatting in their friend's apartment. And of course, they're starting to overstay their welcome. And it really just follows mostly the young woman of the couple as she is trying to find some identity. I mean, her identity is basically the girlfriend of this guy. And there's a lot of little slights given to her from people, like kind of showing that she isn't considered, really as cool or as interesting as he is. And it's a really interesting story, and I love the fact that it doesn't try to be super plot heavy. It really lets Tokyo itself be a big part of that story, because a lot of it is her in the streets of Tokyo and doing various things around Tokyo, and you really get a feel of more like a real life Tokyo, not that kind of glossy, lit up, glowing, colorful version of Tokyo that you get. It's a very just real life, small, tiny apartments, and people aren't rich and people aren't all glitzy and video gamey. It's just real people. And there is a point, like most Gondry, that something fantastical happens, but it's very far into the story, probably almost 3/4 of the way through the story, and something fantastical happens. And what happens, it's weirdly disturbing, not gory, but it's just something really weird happens. And then once it happens, it's interesting. And it's an absurdist kind of a bent that you would get in almost a Lynchian kind of movie, or even a Salvador Dali or Buñuel or something. It's really good, and I like that one a lot. The next one is Merde, and of course that has the character I kind of talked about, and that's almost hard to describe. It's the most over the top of the 3 shorts, and it's the least Tokyo centric, and even this character has been in other cities doing his thing. It's very odd, a little bit disgusting and violent, and I would say the first half of that short is spectacularly good. The second half loses a little bit of steam, where there's a courtroom part of it, and that part doesn't do as well for me. And I think that's the only thing that brings this trilogy down from being almost a 5-star trilogy. And then the final one, Bong Joon-ho's. And this is called Shaking. I think it's called Shaking Tokyo. Let me look it up here for you guys. Yeah, it's called Shaking Tokyo, and it is a really good small story. And Bong Joon, a lot of his stuff are big stories. He's got Okja, and he's got, even when he does something like Parasite, which is people in a house, it feels big. Of course, Snowpiercer is really big, and The Host is big. I would say of all the things that this is closest to would be Mother, which might be my favorite thing he's done. But this is a very small story, which works well with a short story. And the essential story is this: you've got a guy who is basically an agoraphobic, living in his house. And he's almost a hoarder, but he's the reverse of what you think of as a hoarder, which is just pile of gross, haphazard mess. His is meticulously stacked and organized. Like every book is organized, every pizza box is organized, everything is just perfectly encapsulated. He won't even look at the pizza person when they come and deliver to him. He just gives them the money, they give him the pizza box, he moves along his way. He's been doing this for 11 years. And then something happens that comes into his life that changes it. And it also is simple, and there's a slight fantastical element to it, which all 3 of these have. And the fantastical element is subtle, it's interesting, it makes you ask a few questions, but ultimately it's still a character-driven story, and it's really good, really good. There's a few scenes in there I don't even want to describe. There's a few scenes in there where I'm just thinking to myself, like, wow, that's an amazing shot, and how did he quite achieve that? And his is all around Tokyo, even though it's isolated, this guy's little apartment. There's definitely a point where we go out of that apartment. I would highly advise watching Tokyo if you get a chance. It's free on Tubi. You could do a lot worse. Between those two, you should have a few good things to watch. And I will be back soon with more.